Hi, everyone. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I just took a much needed week off of recording. I have recorded consistently to bring you guys in like episodes. I can't speak right now, weekly, and haven't taken off since Christmas. So I was like, you know what? I just need like a week to just not record. And a lot of times, to be honest with you, some of these episodes are hard. And the episode that we're going to be sharing today is hard. And I just sometimes need like a break to just not have to talk about hard things. Although selfishly, this stuff helps me and it makes me feel like I have a purpose in life and I'm helping other people. So I love doing it. But I'm happy to be back. I'm especially grateful to my guest today that I'm going to introduce in a minute. But I was going to ask my listeners that I love so much, all of you, if you ever are so inclined, the reviews that you leave me on Apple especially are so appreciated. It helps new listeners find me. So I really appreciate people taking the time to go to Apple and leave me a quick review. If it's not going to be nice, don't do it. I would rather you just not leave me a review. I'm joking. Don't leave me a review unless it's good. And then my special announcement is I am finally going to be posting the full episodes on YouTube. So you are now seeing me in person, don't have a lot of makeup on, wearing my goggles because I have to. I can't see. You're also seeing my beautiful guest, Kate, who I'm going to introduce. But I'm so grateful to you all. I love doing this. It just it brings me so much fulfillment in my life. So thank you for my listeners. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know. I am going to introduce my guest, Kate Ruehle. Hi, Kate.
Hi.
Oh, I love the heart. Well, now that we're on camera, people can
Thanking
see
you.
you, but
Thanking you with my heart.
I love that you and I met
My
um
too. Do you see
over
that?
social media, and you had listened to an episode because you're dear friends with Michelle Leopold, who, if my listeners have not heard that episode, it's a very, very important episode for people to listen to
Yeah.
about fentanyl and the crisis of fentanyl and losing her son
Trevor.
Trevor.
Yeah.
And spreading the message about fentanyl awareness is her mission in life. And I'm doing everything I can to also spread that message. And so, Kate, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm just so grateful that I now know you and we've been messaging each other. And I know your story is very difficult to tell, but it's needed. And your story is going to touch somebody and hopefully change the path of their own choices in life. That's my hope for this.
Yeah. That's our hope. I just have to share that Michelle gave me this bracelet, and there's two little arrows, but on the inside it says "Keep effing going." I don't know if we can swear on these podcasts or not, but anyway, this
No, I swear pretty much every episode. I love that. I need one of those too, because my favorite thing to say is keep going. Yeah,
my
keep
message
effing
to
going, everyone.
Michelle, and she wears this too, of course. So we
So
just,
you both wear it because
yeah,
you're each other's support systems, right?
hmm yeah, and
Yeah.
we want to
Okay.
share any chance we get about our beautiful sons, and and the hope is that we can save lives, that we can help parents know how to see signs, and and be able to help their young people, their
Yeah.
children.
Yeah. Kate came on today because we're going to share the story of her son. It's a very hard story, I know, Kate, for you to talk about, but it is important for people to listen to. This episode is and could be triggering for somebody, so I want to say that before we share the story. And Kate, I'm just going to ask you we're going to start with your own life because you are an activist, a mother, and an artist, which I love. And I want you to just share a little bit about yourself before we kind of go into the harder things, if that's okay.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Well, I grew up in a really dysfunctional family. My parents divorced when I was 4, and she was 20 when she had me, so she really wasn't ready to have a child, and really had a difficult time being a mother. So she wasn't nurturing. She did not have the best parenting, and my mom died when she was 53 of leukemia, so she had a short life, and she lived it fast and furious, and it's just really sad because she never really got to live her life authentically and in a healthy way. Of course, it doesn't define me, but it made it really difficult for me um, to to be a parent because I didn't have that nurturing. I didn't have any role model as far as a parent is concerned. I didn't have a stable home, so I wanted to make sure that I gave my kids the most loving, um, healthy family life that they could possibly have. And so I probably went a little overboard. Like we celebrated every holiday. I mean, the kids would get gifts for like Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day, and we would dress up, in red or pink or whatever for Valentine's Day, and everyone would wear green for St. Patty's, and like we just had just such a great family um, life, and
So it sounds like, and not to talk over you, but I'm very sorry. And I didn't expect to hear that you had a hard childhood. And so I'm sorry. I also lost my father to leukemia.
oh,
Um,
sorry.
yeah, so I understand the disease. He was 46
Oh,
years old, and so I'm assuming you were pretty young when she passed, if she was
yeah, he was
53.
20 years older than me, so I was 33 when she died, and I hadn't had any of my children yet, so she never got to meet any of her grandchildren.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know the truth bombs will come out occasionally because I'm a very honest, open
No,
person,
but
and
that's I that's part of why I ask these questions, is because I always wanna find out the history, and it does make sense when you come from, like, a dysfunctional childhood, or there's issues, or, like, alcoholism or abuse or anything like that, where sometimes parents overcompensate when they become parents, because they just want the opposite for their children than they had, right?
I'm really glad I did. And, lately, part of my healing has been watching home videos. And something that I do as an artistic, visual, creative person is I do photography and a lot of video. And so I'm sort of like the historian of our family. So I'm always taking pictures and recording every event, not just for my family, but also for my siblings' families and friends. And so I have a lot of videos. Family home videos, which I've been watching. And so that's part of my healing is to watch these videos, to see Warren when he was a baby. I just watched the birth video of my twins with my husband the other night and wept. Watching them, I mean, the whole thing, like it was a cesarean and them being pulled out of
Yeah.
my body and everything. And it's so healing and beautiful to go back and relive those moments. And it's so healing. So I've been doing that. And so
Well, I'll say this to you, that something that I think, and for my listeners, the best thing that you can do in life, and somebody told me this once, nobody's going to care. Like, I'm one of those people. I only like to get my picture taken if I look a certain way, or
yeah.
I don't like when people just come up and I'm in like a weird conversation with a double chin. Like, I'm like, don't take my picture. But someday you realize that the pictures and the videos, you hold on to those for dear life. Like, there is a video of my dad and a tape or something, and that's really all I have left. And my mom recently came on the podcast to
It's
share.
sad.
She
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanna watch.
And I thought to myself, And I said to her on this one day, it makes me tear up to think about this, how lucky I am that I'll have that.
Yeah. It's so
So,
true. It's so true. My dad
yeah,
was,
I didn't think I'd start crying
I
already,
know.
but go,
No, you're
let's
like,
let's
I
keep going.
know, I cry at, like, commercials. You know,
So do I.
touch
I'm the same way.
someone,
Yeah.
an MCI commercial or whatever it was, that telephone one, you reach out and touch someone, and oh my god, and I would cry at that.
Oh, or like diaper commercials. There's those commercials where like, like they're having like the mother and like the baby and like the baby saying like I'll just cry over anything, but it's not
Same.
when I'm
Yeah.
recording my podcast and I cry all the time, it's not always great for my audience probably.
I didn't wear
Um,
any mascara on the bottom today, but, I was just gonna say my father passed away a couple years ago. He had stage 4 lung cancer, and, sadly, well, the whole thing was really tragic, the timing and everything, because he was diagnosed 2 months after my son died by suicide, and so I had to deal with my father's, um, slow demise. Well,
Passing at the same time.
within, a year to the date pretty much that he was diagnosed. So I lost my son in 2019. And then during COVID, I lost my father to cancer. So that was, double whammy.
Okay, I
I
am
just
so
wanted to say,
very sorry, and now yeah, it makes sense to me though that you and Michelle are tight because you both lost your sons around the same time, correct?
exactly. Yeah. And I'll talk about that too. But I just want to say that my dad was in one of these home videos, and I would ask him questions intentionally, like about his past, because I want those family stories, right? Like you're talking about your dad, and just seeing that video of him, and that you can really treasure that. And so I would interview him and ask him questions about his childhood, and it was just so great having that, such a treasure. So I just wanted to add that too. To just watch that. So it was wonderful.
Well, I love that, and I love that you are we're gonna get into this story, but, the best thing that you can do people grieve in all different kinds of ways, and I just
Yeah.
had an episode where we talked about grieving, with the Good Morning podcast, the girls from that podcast, and one of them had lost her mother to suicide,
Okay.
and,
Yeah, I'm
and
gonna watch
yeah,
that
and
too.
we talk a lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. We talk a lot about grieving and how we all grieve in different ways. And grieving for me, because you can already tell I just started crying, is a lifelong process. And to normalize grieving of like your child, your dad, for me, my best friend, my sister, is it's okay because you're gonna spend your life grieving these people. You're never physically gonna see them again. So for people to just say, "Oh, it's been this period of time," well, I don't agree with that at all because for the rest of my life, will be grieving my loved ones that I cherished and loved. So I just wanted to say that because I think
No,
that's
it's
so
so
important to
true. I
point out.
completely agree with you. And I've been hearing a lot about how, like, your grief is a measure of your love, like, I mean, not that, like, if
I just posted that. I
you know
literally
what?
just posted that.
Okay, that's where I saw it.
I did. I posted
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
That must be a sign. I posted that the day before yesterday.
It's
I'll
so
send it to you.
true because
That is so crazy.
our love is so deep, and and not that if we're not openly crying and feeling heartbroken all the time that our love wasn't as deep, but grief is love being expressed, and whatever you posted was beautiful,
Yes.
so that's what I'm referring to. Yeah. We forgot to
Oh, okay. 'Cause I'm like
did you light your candle?
I was like, "Kate, are you" No, I have my candle. For the listeners that can't see, we I was telling Kate before we started that every episode I light a candle. It's my little like ritual that I do before I start recording. And it brings me like peace and happiness, and she was saying the same thing. It kind of like makes you feel like maybe our loved ones are with us right now. I don't know.
Just lit mine.
Aw,
And this
yeah.
says, in memory of a life so beautifully lived and a heart so deeply loved. So that's for my boy and for all those that we've lost to suicide.
I love that. So let's get into this story. And I know this is difficult. Um, I've openly talked to you through social media and my audience about my own period of time in my own life where I didn't want to live. I was having suicidal ideations, and I struggled with it for a long time, like a full, I would say a full 8 months of my life, and I couldn't get it out of my head. And I will tell you this, I'm not crazy. I just there was it was for me, it was a situational depression that had boiled up from being diagnosed with complex PTSD stemming from my childhood.
Mm,
And I really saw no other way out. And 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 the thing is that people need to understand, because I think I've done a lot of research and reading on this, is um, when you are suicidal, you're almost like made the villain, that you're so selfish, or if you were to take your or did somebody did take their own life, then everybody goes when they pass, oh, you're so selfish, you're so this, you're so they were so that. It's so unfair
yeah.
because the amount of pain that somebody is in that period is like nothing I can ever explain to somebody else that can understand unless they were in it. So I just want to say that, and I would like for you, if you're okay, to share the story.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really important for people to understand. Um, you're in so much pain when you're in that place, like you expressed so well. Um, you, you don't think rationally. You're not thinking about how things would affect other people, and especially as a 17-year-old boy, which my son, when he died, he was just over 17. He was a high school senior. And he was an extreme introvert. So he wasn't someone, and I'm probably an extreme extrovert. So our personalities are, we're really different. The way we like just connected with others, and like as an extrovert, and I think you're probably an extrovert too, we need people to fill us, and to be around people
Yeah.
energizes us, whereas an introvert needs their time alone to recharge. And so it was really hard for me to really understand him and his needs, and he didn't understand me. It was hard to communicate um, to begin with, because we were both opposite in our in that respect. As a child, though, interestingly enough, he seemed to be extroverted, and he was really goofy and just joyful, bouncy. He loved jumping and running and typical boy, antics. And one of his favorite things to do was to do running flips. And he was constantly doing running flips. I had a slip and slide in the backyard, and he's running flips, and it was just amazing how he could just do them anywhere, even like in his bedroom. One day I heard this thumping noise, and I was like, what on earth is that? So I go upstairs, I knock on his door, and I was like, what's going on in there, Warren? And he goes, oh, I'm practicing my flips. So that's who he was, and cracking jokes and goofy and just so different than the person he became. And one of his friends said that when he started high school, his freshman year, he changed, and he became very withdrawn, more and more so over the years until his senior year, where he was just really shut down. But it was a slow process, and so it was gradual. So, it wasn't like an obvious sign that we saw. So freshman year, he just stopped being goofy. He was more serious, but you could attribute that to him wanting to do well in school and him taking school seriously because he was, and he was
Yeah.
getting,
Yeah.
really good grades. And he was on the tennis team, and, outwardly he was, really high functioning. And which a lot of these kids are. And that's another reason why it's really hard to realize that they're in trouble, because outwardly they are doing all the things that would make you think that they're okay, that they're thriving.
Mhm.
Same, right? Because you're
Mhm.
like a really ambitious woman. You were doing all these things when you were suffering, smiling, being, no one probably knew what was going on inside of you until you started talking.
Until I started talking.
And then you
Until I
did.
started talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you did. But
And then I
before that,
did.
no
Yeah.
one would have known, right? Because you were outwardly living your life, weren't you? Like
Well,
functioning in a
I think that I yeah, I think that I would hide and I still do. I hide behind humor. Um,
Yeah, yeah, a
and
lot of
wanted to
people
be
do.
the funny. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like Robin
Tell me
Williams.
what
People.
Robin Williams is a perfect example. I'm like a female Robin Williams. Um, but I'm not as funny as Robin Williams, and I've never been in any movies. But let me ask you, what was there something that happened his freshman year of high school? Like, was he experimenting with pot, or was he like going to parties and drinking alcohol? Was it anything related to that? I had to
Nothing.
ask that.
No, I know.
Nothing.
And
Okay.
you would assume, right? You would assume that maybe he got involved in those kind of things. He never did. He never did drugs. He wouldn't even take like melatonin to help him sleep in the beginning. He was really against that, any kind of drugs, even homeopathic. He just didn't want to take anything because Warren's thing was he wanted to fix himself. He was very
Okay.
stubborn. He wanted to do everything on his own. He didn't want any help. And that was part of the reason why, he died by suicide, was because he did not ask for help and he thought he could fix himself. So no drugs, no alcohol. He didn't even have a girlfriend. Like he's still a virgin when he died. He still had braces on when he died. It's just so heartbreaking because he did not get to live his life. And part of me wishes
Yeah.
that, maybe he would have done some experimenting, that he would have had some life, experiences, which I had a ton, by the time I was his age. I did so much, probably really too much, way too much. But it just breaks my
Me
heart.
too. Yeah.
Breaks my heart that he didn't get to.
Yeah, he was a baby. He
Yeah,
was a baby.
the
Let me ask you, was he dealing with, like, bullying at school, or,
no,
like, were kids meet nothing like
no,
that?
he
Okay.
had
Okay. Because 'cause I'm
friends.
always
I know,
curious.
it's crazy. So Warren's case is pretty unique, I think, and I think it
Yeah.
mostly has to do with addiction to video games and social isolation, he had social anxiety, um, pretty severe, and, he got addicted to video games pretty early on, and we knew it was a problem. We used
Okay.
to lock up his, laptop and all his devices in a safe to keep him off of them because he would be on them like 24/7 if he had his choice. But it was kind of too late. Like he was already so addicted that we couldn't, and it's a drug because it stimulates the dopamine, right? So in a way,
Yeah. Yeah.
he had that drug of the dopamine blasts, the brain getting those dopamine blasts when he played video games. So
Yeah.
there was an addiction. It wasn't drugs, but it was to that dopamine blast. He even
Well,
wrote about it in
they've
his
also done yeah, they've also done studies, and I'm sorry if I'm talking over you, I'm hoping the connection's okay. They've done studies on screen time in boys specifically. I'm sure
yeah.
seen some of these studies and what it does to young boys' brains, and then I talk about this a lot, that our brains as human beings are not fully developed till they're 25. So video games are really harmful, they're finding in these studies that they're doing specifically for boys.
I'm really glad that you mentioned that you brought that up, because I don't think there's enough studies being done. And I think that that is like a precursor to drug addiction. They start out with
Mhm,
this addiction to, the video games, and then they're used to getting those dopamine blasts, and then
mhm.
they start searching for another, stronger high. That's how it is with the marijuana that leads to Xanax or whatever. So I feel like a lot of it
Mhm.
starts with video games, and that addiction leads to other addictions, which I don't think they've done a lot of studies around. But
They
anyway, I think
I need to find the one that I sent you, but I did do an episode with, Dr. Tracy Bennett, and she kind of, like, touches on that and screen time in general, but just
mhm,
to point that out, how that's something that they're finding, and something for parents to be aware of, and I know most parents, like, you're either one extreme or the other, and I'm a mom, I know that my kids are on screens all the time, I have girls, but, it's
mhm,
hard as a parent because all you wanna do at the end of the day is, like, unwind, right? But it's really hard to control how much your kids are on screens. There's, like, a fine
that's
line, which I know you understand. Yeah.
well, there's like the megaverse, which is happening, which is like, and I find myself getting sucked into it too. I'm on
Me
Instagram all the
too.
time. It's like
Yeah.
vicariously
Yeah.
through other people who are traveling the world, who are, like I watch your podcasts, and you can spend all your half your day literally, quite easily actually, in that metaverse or whatever they're calling it. Metaverse, is that it? You know what I'm
Yeah.
talking about?
It's called Meta
Yeah.
now. Yeah. It's Met or
Whatever it
Facebook's Meta now, but yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just I
It's
mean,
kinda
not to
scary.
change the subject, but
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
it's very, very addicting, screen time in general for me too. Like, I know, um, when I went through my friend breakup, I had to delete, I had to block a lot of people because for me, it was very, very, triggering if I saw, like, photos of me not being invited to something or,
It's hard.
and I think people were like, I had to do that for my own mental health because that was something I was really struggling with.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, put a device in a young child's hands or a video game like we're talking about, and it's like they just don't have the ability. If we don't even have the ability as adults, with fully formed brains,
Mhm.
then kids obviously don't, right?
Right.
Okay, so let's kind of talk about specifically what happened, like, when he got to his senior year. Was there, like, a day, and I'm saying this too because this is to educate parents, especially I have a lot of parents that listen to this. I know that I have a 12-year-old daughter that I worry about, I have her in therapy. Um, I worry about, depression runs in my family.
Mhm.
It's, something that I'm very, very well aware of, but I just want to be prepared. So tell me about that day. Tell me about like what was going on at that specific time. Were there any warning signs? Was there anything that you noticed or had any kind of feeling that something was happening?
Okay. Um, so looking back in retrospect, you you can figure out the signs. At the time, we just noticed he had been irritable. He was an insomniac. He wasn't sleeping for a long period of time, and that is definitely um, something that can trigger mental health issues. As you probably know, insomnia can really, they use it as a form of torture for a reason, like keeping someone
Mhm,
awake with
mhm,
them. So that was part of it. But he was irritable. Um, he was always tired, and could be typical teenage behavior. He's a boy. Kind of like not wanting to have conversations and kind of avoiding questions, just not wanting. He'd say, one time he said to me, "Mom, why do you ask me so many questions?" And I was like, "Because I care about you, because I'm interested in your life." We're driving in the car. That's when he was my captive audience. But so that's how he was,
Yeah.
He didn't seem to be his happy, joy, the goofy self anymore, hardly at all. Very, very little. Like the cats, and maybe our dog. We have a lot of pets. Would make him laugh. He would giggle and he'd play with them, and that was about the only time I saw him really being happy. But we attributed his seriousness and all of that to him wanting to really do well in school, which he was. So he was getting the best grades of his life. He was really applying himself. So basically that's how he was showing up in the world at that time. And there was I would say about a week, maybe 2 weeks before he died, before he chose to leave us, he had this sense of urgency about wanting to get things done. Okay. He never gave things away,
Mm.
never talked about, how we'd be better off without him or how, none of that. Never talked that way. He didn't talk much at all. I never saw him cry.
Mhm.
He did not seem depressed to me. And I've had depression. And my depression it manifests really differently. So I didn't recognize his depression because it just was really different than my own and what I'm used to seeing. Um, anyway, so he wanted to get things done. Like he was like, "Mom, when are we going to go and get my acne medicine? Like, I've been asking you, like, let's do that. When can we do that?" And he'd have post notes that he'd put around for me to remind me. And he was really annoyed that I wasn't like on it. And it was like, whoa, like we'll get it done. And then he wanted to get his driver's license, and he was kind of behind because he was already at 17. He wanted to get that, and anyway, so it was a sense of urgency. And then all of a sudden, I think the week before, he was like, "No, it doesn't matter. We'll do it next week. I'm too tired." Yeah, it's not a big deal anymore, right? He just all of a sudden switched from this sense of urgency to like, "That's okay. Let's do it next week. I'm too tired." So I thought, oh, well, he's
Yeah.
relaxing. He's not, as stressed out. But I think he'd already made up his mind about what he was going to do. He'd already made up his mind.
Maybe he was, like, fighting maybe the sense of urgency, and this is maybe me analyzing it, but, was him fighting the decision, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Like I said, he wanted to fix himself. You figured if he got everything
Yeah.
right, like if he got, like we all do, like once I get my driver's license, once I do this, once I do that, once I get accepted into that college,
Mhm.
everything's going to be better. And something happened with the school, which I think was also a trigger for him that really set him off was that, and this is really upsetting to me because he was filling out his applications for the college,
Mhm.
applications, and he was writing down or filling in the different classes that he had taken to make sure he had all his requirements. And it turned
Mhm.
out that the class that he had taken, which was product design, didn't cover his art requirement. So he couldn't apply to the colleges. He couldn't graduate basically. We
Oh,
found this out like right before graduation, right before school got out, and like there was no time to make this class up. And so I'm sure he had a lot of stress about that. I know I did. And so I called
yeah.
his counselor and I said, he can't apply to colleges. He can't graduate. He doesn't have his art requirement. And she said, "Oh, all he needs to do is take an art class over the summer at the college, so he ended up taking a medieval art class at the College of Marin, which was like a lecture class. Can you imagine a 17-year-old boy sitting through a medieval art lecture? A boy who has no interest in art
No.
whatsoever. He didn't want to do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he would make
Yeah.
up excuses for us to pick him up. Like he'd say the class was canceled. He didn't want to do it. And I think, also at that point, he'd already decided he wasn't going to college, that he was going to end his life. So I think he had planned it maybe a couple of weeks. He had made his decision at that point. It's not working out. I can't go to college. No, it's just too hard. It's just too much. And he opted out.
Yeah.
That's what it's like. It's like they opt out. It's like, this isn't working out.
Yeah.
Nothing's going right. I can't get a girlfriend. Can't graduate from high school because I don't have my art requirement. I can't get into the colleges that I want. So many things were going against him, and he worked so hard. He worked really hard. He tried so hard up until
Yeah.
the very end, But that's the thing, it's like it gets better and you can fix things. And that's the thing about young people, like you said, like their brains and prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. So they don't know that it's not going to always be this way, that there's actually a future that can be better because they don't have a concept of the future. They don't understand
Yeah.
better,
Yeah.
And so that would be my message, like to, anyone out there who's just so frustrated, who just feels like nothing's going right for them. It does get better. It can all change tomorrow. Everything can completely change, and this, right?
Yeah. I mean,
Like,
but that's the thing. It's like life is not easy, but you just, you
yeah.
know, when you are in that place and it's different for everybody that's suicidal or feels those feelings, everybody has a different story, but it's like when you have just given up and you're hopeless. I tell the story of, and I've told it on the podcast before, of sitting on the beach, and looking at my all I ever wanted was to be a mom, and I wanted 2 little girls specifically, and I was looking out to the ocean, and I saw my girls playing, and I thought in my head, like, "This is my dream," and I just didn't care anymore, and, like, that's when I was like, "Okay." But that's also because I was an adult, so I had the ability to go, "This is bad. I need to, like, really figure this out." For me, I went on medication because I had to.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
like my last stop, it was like either this is it or it's not. And I'm not saying, by the way, that I don't still struggle. We all do as people. You've said yourself, like you have depression, but it shows up in a different way. My depression shows up in a different way than your depression does. Warren's depression showed up in a different way than both of ours. And it's like, none of this is obviously your fault as a parent, which I can't imagine, like, what it would be like to struggle with the guilt and all the things that came afterwards. But it is just something I wanted to point out. It's like something that you can't control. It's like this dark, dark demon almost that's
Mhm.
telling you that you don't wanna be here. That's the best way I can kind of describe it for myself, and
No, I've
it took
heard,
over, and it sounds like that was happening to him.
yeah, that people will say there was a voice, and one of my friends, her son, jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, year ago in August, and
Mhm.
he had a psychotic break from high potency THC, and he had a voice that was telling him that he needed to go and do that, that he needed to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and just was relentless, and the voices, you hear that, that it's almost like these demonic voices that are telling, especially young people that are, you know, um, taking mind altering drugs, you know,
Mhm.
and they also say that schizophrenia can be, you know, a result of the high potency THC. So, then you have this psychotic break, and pretty soon, all you hear is voices in your head, and that's the rest of your life, right? So that's why it's so
Yes.
important that we talk about, the risks of drugs, because already we've got mental health issues. We've got these voices, just normal, right? Just every day, no drugs in us at all. And then you add those drugs on top of it, and just imagine
Well,
how,
also just like situational life, like if
yeah,
you're already struggling like Warren was struggling, and then to be told like when he worked so hard that he wasn't going to be able to apply to colleges. It's like piece by piece, it's like building a ladder almost,
yeah,
like I'm assuming, and this is me being assumptive, but like he probably was like, this is the next step, then I'm going to do this next step, and to have the ladder be pulled a
yeah,
lot. Most people can deal with the ladder being pulled, but some people
mhm,
just can't. They don't have the ability, and if you're already
couldn't
struggling, it's like a perfect storm. It's a perfect
yeah,
storm, you know?
yeah, yes, absolutely, that's a really good way to put it. It was a perfect storm for him. It was like this really slow, like, or almost like a sneaker wave that just came up, and just took him out, just one thing after another going wrong, and then he just, I think that happens with a lot of people who die by suicide. It's just like, nothing's going right. So many things are going wrong. And, people of all ages are dying by suicide, and even people who have coping skills, right? Who dealt with depression all their lives, and they're just decide they're giving up. You look at the world today and everything that's going on in our world, and that can be really hopeless, right? You think about the gun violence, you think about, the
Mhm.
politicians, corrupt politicians, and the environment, global warming, on, right? And that can make you hopeless. Even if you're someone who is hopeful, who has a positive worldview, that can even make someone who doesn't even have depression feel hopeless sometimes. So it's a lot.
Yeah,
For
100%.
all.
So when Warren, um, finally, like, made the choice, like we kind of talked about that day, like, what was that day? What happened that day? I
I,
mean,
I,
you don't have to go into details if
I'm
you
sorry,
aren't comfortable.
run away with my messages, and I'm probably a hard person to interview
No,
because
that oh, Kate, don't be Kate, everything you say, we're on the same page, and I'll talk about that at the end too.
okay.
Yeah.
So that day, so I guess I've been avoiding that. This is hard to talk about because I found him, and
Yeah.
his twin sister was home with me. It was a school day. It was a Friday, February 8th, 2019. And I had to bring him to school, and he wasn't ready. Usually he would be the one to like poke me awake, make sure that I was going to get
Mhm.
up in time and everything. And his door was closed. I knocked on his door. He didn't answer his door. And I opened the door and I found him. And he'd hung himself. And he was in his bathroom, and started yelling, help me, someone help me." And yeah,
I know that this is so hard to talk about, and honestly, I feel speechless because I really can't imagine, like, that what that was like, and the pain, and I just I'm speechless. I don't know what to say. Um,
It's a hard thing to
How
live
the
through.
like
Oh,
yeah,
it's really
yeah.
hard, especially for someone who's
How did so let me ask you this. Yeah, how did you, because you already had your own trauma in life and stuff you'd already
yeah.
dealt with. What did you do? Like, how did you deal with this? And I know, like, it's like step by step. I talk about that a lot, dealing with trauma,
Yeah.
specifically like the loss of a child is the worst thing that anybody can ever go through. And then that the loss of a child by the child taking their own life is unbearable.
Mhm.
How did you go on?
Yeah, and then finding them. So
Yeah.
I I had, his 17-year-old sister who was having this experience with me, and I just wanted to like mama bear, like I need to protect my family and make us all safe.
Mhm.
And I needed to get out of the house. So once everything was done, the coroner came and they took his body away. I was like, we need to leave. We still live in the same house, which can be very hard, but I have insisted on staying here, which a lot of people don't really understand. Even other moms who've lost their children, they need to get out right away. They need to move. And anyway, we can get into that some other time. But I did something. So I checked us into a hotel and we'd stay there for 4 days until we all stabilized and we were treated for shock. The next day, I checked
Mhm.
into the ER, which is probably the best thing that I've ever done in my life. And I don't even know what made me think of doing it, but I knew we were in shock, you know. And I mean, my daughter and I could have had major PTSD from that experience. And so I thought, we're in shock. We need to be treated. We need to go to the ER. And so I just had my whole family go, my two daughters, my husband, and myself. And we were there pretty much all day. And it was amazing how they took care of us. And I don't even think people know that you can go. Like, if you've been, even if you're not injured, like physically injured, you're dealing with shock and trauma. And, yeah, and so they took really good care of us. They gave us warm blankets, they gave us sedatives, they gave us, well, something to help us sleep, and then a therapist came to talk to us. We had to wait a while for him to come, but he spoke to each one of us individually, and he's a trauma specialist. And then he became my husband. And then he talked to us as a family. And he became my husband's therapist. And he's now my therapist. And he's been in our lives ever since. But I mean, he's an amazing man. And he's just been such a blessing to us. So that was a real gift to be able to have that experience. And because we did that, and because we got help right away and addressed our PTSD, um, or the shock of that experience, we didn't have lasting effects. So I don't have flashbacks. I did EMDR. I don't have flashbacks. I can do my laundry, which is the laundry room is right next to his bedroom, right next to his bathroom where I found him. Sometimes I'll think about it like he just died. Like, it not just died, it's been 3 years, but he died in that room right next to me. And I could kind of go back to that day, but somehow I'm able to like compartmentalize it. I don't go in his room a lot. I want to set it up as like a shrine or something really beautiful, like a living memorial to him. But yeah, so that was the very best thing that I think I've ever done. And it really, really helped us heal.
I wanna interrupt you for a second and point out that that's huge, and the fact that you thought of doing that is huge, and that is a reminder to my audience. God forbid anybody ever finds themselves in that place, but it just is a reminder that how important it is that that's known, that that's an option, because
Yeah.
people, I mean, the suicide rates are the highest they've ever been in the history of our country right now, which is terrifying. They're the
Yeah.
highest they've ever been.
Yeah.
And I think I the latest statistic I saw was I think they might even be triple what they were from
Well, it
5
depends on
years
which
ago.
age,
I might be wrong.
age group? Are you talking about across all demographics or?
No,
Yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
about specifically, like, teenagers.
teenagers. Yeah, it's
Um,
a
but
second leading cause with within the 10 to 24-year-old demographic. Second leading cause of death for 10
and the
to
first leading cause of death is guns, by the way, for that age group, which we can touch on at the end. Um, I I I'm always like part of why I do this, by the way, Kate, is to point out like it's like normalizing mental health, normalizing grieving, normalizing all of these things, sharing these like your horrific story, but showing my audience and my listeners that if you can go on and we can go on and we can meet like you and I can meet over social media because of the fabulous Michelle, um, and these people come into our lives, and if we were just more open, you know what I'm saying? Like, maybe these things wouldn't maybe we can help each other. I don't know. I'm so Pollyanna about things
No, no,
sometimes, but I just
no,
had to
you're
say
right. I mean, we are helping each other, like Michelle and Tori Crop and, Marianne Kalo. And I'm not pronouncing her name right, sorry, Marianne. We're the angel moms that support each other. We have our own little group, and we've also helped others in the county. People will call us when their friend has lost a child or a coworker or someone, and they'll call us and they'll say, "Can you talk to my friend? They need support." And so we are helping each other. We're supporting each other, and that's how we get through it. We hold each other up. Sometimes, one of us can barely walk anymore. We're just like going through a really rough time, and there's been times when other moms have been suicidal, and one mom attributes the support she received from Michelle and I, to her even being alive today. So when you hear things like that, you know that you're making a difference. And that's really all that matters.
and that it gives you purpose and that you're living in Warren's memory,
Yes.
like, this is, like or in Michelle's case, Trevor, like and then I was gonna say the fact that this happened right before COVID,
Yeah.
um, the timing couldn't have been worse,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, it was crazy.
I mean,
Just one thing after another.
and just the yeah, and then, like, losing your dad,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it was just one thing after another. Um,
So,
do
one thing I
you mind go ahead, sorry.
No, I just before we end, because I noticed we only got 5 minutes, I did wanna touch on, the Marin County Strategic Plan, and, the Marin County, Suicide Prevention Collaborative. I just wanted to talk about that.
Please do. Yes, please do, because, and Marin is in we're in California, so I'm in Los Angeles, and then you're in the San Francisco area, but I'm assuming when you talk about this, that there's support all over the country, and if there's not, then shame on all the things that are happening all over the country because we need it, especially now. So why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, so the reason why it's so important to talk about this is because, well, it's working for one thing. It's a huge effort that has been that's been undertaken since, and ironically, since my son died, all these things have happened. So that's one of the things I wanted to point out, was just that, my son, I told you he died February of 2019. In the summer of 2019, the Behavioral Health and Human Services um, organization, or uh, department in the county, they started a suicide prevention strategic planning committee. And so they had professionals from the medical fields, behavioral health, social services, education, different people from different demographics and underserved people throughout the county that came together and met together to write a strategic plan to address suicide in Marin County. And I was also part of the planning committee, so they had suicide loss survivors as well. And I would sit in a circle with a doctor, the pediatrician, or like the Kelly Finley from NAMI, the executive director, and we would talk about how we saw suicide prevention being, prevented, like my experiences, and how we wanted to see this strategic plan written, and just giving our input. Um, and so I shared my lived experience and that kind of thing. So we worked on that. And then once the strategic plan, I just lost my notes, was implemented, then and it was a comprehensive plan that included practices that were proven to reduce suicide and suicide attempts. So it was what is the word they use? Evidence-based. I'm trying to remember the terminology that they
Okay.
evidence,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it really is an amazing plan. And I can send you the behavioral health and human services department has a website that, and it has a whole section on suicide prevention where you can actually read the plan, which is amazing. The reason why it's important to share it is because it's duplicatable, and it's working in our county, and other counties can do this, across the country.
So,
So
so is this the first county and place in the country to do this?
I don't think it's the first that's done it. It's been
Okay.
done. I believe this is a model that was shared from I think it was the mayor in Palo Alto who got this going, because at Gun High School had a really high suicide rate. I don't know if you heard about it. There was a
Mhm.
movie
Yeah.
documentary done about it, Gun High School. And so a woman named Monica Hooley was in touch with him and suggested a strategic plan for our county. She is a suicide loss survivor mom. And she was the mother of Gabriel Hooley, who was one of the 3 boys who died in 2017 that led to the strategic plan being written in the first place. And those boys died within a 2-week period of each other. They were all high school senior boys. And so that's how it all started. And then my son died 17 months after these boys died. So you had the cluster, and then my son died. So, there is definitely something to be said about the clusters and how it plants a seed. It does happen. I believe it happened with
Yeah.
my son, even though it was 17 months later. I do believe it was directly related to his death. So then we had the strategic plan, was announced. The supervisors, the Marin County Board of Supervisors, were, part of this from the beginning. And so it was approved, and they, they gave it their blessing, sort of, the whole formal. They have the what do they call it, proclamation, and it was really exciting. That all started I believe it was in February of 2020, which was a year after my son died. We started the Marin County Suicide Prevention Collaborative, which is huge. And there's
I
like
mean, it's like enormous, and it also shows
incredible.
like your work and everything that you're doing, like how proud Warren would be, I'm sure, and he's looking over you. You touched on staying in the house, and the laundry room. And by the way, I'm a huge fan of EMDR. I think it's really important for people that have gone through some sort of trauma. Taking a memory specifically, and you basically, by doing EMDR, are able to kind of make that memory not what it was, right?
Yeah,
you use a you
exactly.
use, like, this, like, vibrating tool in each hand. I've done it,
Yep,
and
that's exactly
it's
what I did.
crazy because it really works. So you take a memory that's, like, traumatic, and then you do this, like, zapping thing with your hands, and you're like, "Oh my god," and then the memory, so it makes sense to me that you are able to, like, successfully use EMDR, and then staying in the house, I think, is a beautiful thing, in my opinion, because it's like you're surrounded by happy memories and not letting that one memory take away all of the years that you had in your home. And then I'm a huge
Exactly.
believer in, like, spirit, and I'm very spiritual, and knowing that my angels are always with me, and
Mhm.
my
Mm.
dad and my sister and Julie, my best friend. So, I think
Have
that
to show
that's a
you this
beautiful thing.
picture of angels. I love this one
What
because
ma
he looks like an angel. Do you see his angel
Yeah,
wings? The water?
yes,
They make
yes,
wings. You see that?
yes, I love it. I love it.
So I have this.
Let me just ask you in closing, because I know this is a very, for my audience, the listeners that are listening to this is a really hard, triggering episode. Kate, you're amazing that you came on and you shared this, and that you're doing something, like living your life. Like, I know some people hate it when you say, "Oh, everything happens for a reason." I mean, the worst things happen. Oh, so handsome. I wish everyone, in case you wanna see some of these pictures that Kate's showing me right now, go to YouTube. Judging Meghan podcast is my channel. I just kind of basically am starting doing things on camera, but you can see some of these photos. But I wanted to ask you what your sign is, that that warrants. Do you have a sign?
Well, yeah, I mean, I get hearts all the time. I see them in the
You
craziest
do?
all the time. Yeah, and not just rocks. I mean, like, like a little foam on my coffee. I take pictures. I've collected them. So I have a lot of hearts in different, forms. They come to me always. And also feathers, lots and lots of feathers,
Feathers are a huge one.
really
Yeah.
bouquet feathers. I have a lot of amazing stories about signs, and Michelle and I are constantly sending pictures to each other and texting each
Yeah.
other. And like one time we were at lunch and a van drove by and it said Trevor on it. And she's like, "Oh, Trevor shot," and it's just like
No,
happens
it's
all the time.
it's crazy to me because these, like, listen to these signs, like, watch out for these signs. Maya and I talk about all the time is the monarch butterfly. But Michelle, the so listen for my audience listeners that haven't listened to the episode. So Michelle's sign, she lost her son Trevor to the fentanyl overdose in 2019 also, but she sees hearts on rocks, like rocks in the shape of a heart. And I
Mhm.
told her I was doing laundry right after I recorded with her. I don't know if you listened to me. I did an
Yeah.
Instagram live with her, and I found it was so weird. I found a heart-shaped rock in my laundry, in my dryer. So I'm like, "Oh my gosh." Like, if
That
you
was
don't believe in
amazing.
signs,
It's
isn't that a
crazy.
crazy
Yeah,
story?
it is.
Yeah.
The spirit
So,
wants to be seen. They want us to know their spirits live on, and they are just
yeah.
constantly sending us signs. You can't deny them.
And that and
You
that
I
and that
mean,
you'll see,
oh,
I mean, I believe I'm gonna see them again. Like, I
oh,
live
me
for
too.
that. I
Yeah.
live for the fact that I'm like, I'm gonna, like, "Dad, you better be, like, sitting there waiting for me, with a martini or a buttery Chardonnay." My dad liked to gin and tonic.
Oh,
Um,
love it.
I just wanna tell you,
Champagne with
keep
my
doing your work, Kate.
yeah.
Yeah, keep doing your work, keep looking out for the feathers and the hearts, those are all signs, and honestly, I am just honored to know you. I'm grateful that you shared your story of Warren, and I hope that people understand, like, what an inspirational person you are, and in closing, I say this because my dad used to say it all the time, and so I've chosen to live my life to try to emulate my dad. I'm not perfect, believe me. I think I cussed somebody out yesterday at a light, but I will say this. Be happy by making other people happy. Thank you, Kate.
Yes, amen. Thank you so much.